Today I will grade the bar exam essay that I took a couple of weeks ago. We will look at a real grading rubric created by the bar examiners, their model answer, and then I will grade the essay using their criteria. By watching me do this, you will develop the skills you need to perform better on timed essay exams, whether for class or on the bar exam. Hello, Lawlings. This is Professor Bo Baez. Inward, outward, upward. By making inward changes, you will see outward improvements that drive your grades upward. A few weeks ago, I took a timed essay exam that I had never seen before. Go watch that video first and then come back. I'll be waiting. Really, go watch it. I'll wait. Okay, here we go. All right, so what I want to do today is to go through the exam that I took a couple of episodes ago, where I took a bar exam essay that I had never seen before. So what we're going to do is we're going to grade it. So first I'm going to show you the criteria. So let me move now and show you the criteria used by the Board of Bar Examiners. I found this some years ago and discovered that this is the criteria used by many Board of Bar Examiners. Some use a 10-point scale, some use a 100-point scale. Just add a 0 if you are in a jurisdiction that uses a 10-point scale. The key here is to get a 70. This is my understanding of what California uses, but again, other jurisdictions would just drop the 0 on a scale of 1 to 10. So a passing score is a 70, meaning you spotted all major issues and you do an adequate job of weaving in important facts. So this is what is viewed as minimal competency. If you score a 70, then you have passed that particular question on the bar exam. All right, so this is the criteria, so you can kind of see, and so that's the starting point. A bar examiner starts off with a minimal competency, that's how they begin, and then they grade up or down, depending on what they find on the essay. But you always start off at this 70 mark, minimal competency. So that's the criteria. We'll come back to it later to see what grade I assign it based on the essay. We're not going to go through the entire essay, but I will post this essay and all these materials I'm showing you on my website. So look for a link down in the description and you will find it there. And then you can go back and look at this more carefully. So here's the question. I was asked, Susan is seeking damages for injuries she suffered as a result of Anne's attack and has sued the university, Jim, and Anne's psychiatrist. 1. May Susan recover damages for physical injuries she suffered in Anne's attack from the university? Explain, Jim explain, and psychiatrist explain. And then question 2 is a question here dealing with whether she'll be able to recover for her PTSD. Pretty broad, and let's see what they were looking for. I assumed, and we'll get to that momentarily, it looked like they were looking for negligence. Well, negligence is composed of 5 elements: duty, breach, actual cause, proximate cause, and damages, which made it very challenging to complete this essay under time conditions. That's 30 minutes, closed book, closed note. So let's see what they were looking for. I have the answer key. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Here's the answer key. So let's look through this first, and then I will go back and look at my answer. Let me just move these along. All right, here we go. The grader, the Board of Bar Examiners, determined that these were the 4 issues that they were going to give points on. And it's very interesting. We'll see question 1A. Did they have a duty that was the cause, in fact, and proximate cause? So duty, breach of duty, causation. So far, so good. Same issue with Jim, psychiatrist, and PTSD. That's a lot to do in 30 minutes. So let's look down at their summary. So the grader would have looked, sort of read through this and then graded it using the rubric. There's a brief summary of the issue, and then we get to point 1. So the first issue was 30%. The university owed a duty of care to Susan for several reasons. One, because she was a resident in their dorm, and they had a duty to protect her from foreseeable criminal activity. And then it goes through some analysis as to how you get there, and also determine that you could have gotten to the same place because she was an invitee in the building. Either way, either as an invitee or a duty to protect from foreseeable criminal activities. Either way, we can establish duty. Then there's some discussion on breach of duty here, sort of the facts that would lead you to show that there was a breach of duty. Now, I found it very interesting in reading this rubric. There's really no discussion on any of the other elements. It just says, and they could find that they were the cause and facts and proximate cause of Susan's injuries. That becomes relevant because if, when you're writing the exam, like I did, and you're trying to define what actual cause is, and then define proximate cause and define damages, you find that 30 minutes was not a lot of time to answer this exam. But again, looking at the call of the question, going back to it, you'll see it says here, discuss, explain, right? Which leads, I would suggest, you need to write a full negligence essay, but that's ultimately not what the grader was looking for. Question 2, 25% of the grade, looking at the duty owed by Jim. You may recall Jim is a stranger and came to her assistance. There was no special relationship, and ultimately there is no duty owed. And there's some discussion here on what facts lead you to conclude that there is no lawsuit against Jim, that he did nothing wrong. Number one, he had no duty, and he did not leave her in a worse off condition. The third issue, the psychiatrist. And this is a Tarasoff issue, and we'll look at that more carefully when we get to my answer. And the court goes through a Tarasoff analysis. When do you have a duty to warn a third party who is a member of an indeterminate class against whom the patient has made threats? The analysis here is far above and beyond what anybody could ever write. This is primarily for the grader, so they have a sense of the types of answers to look for in determining how they're going to apply that rubric. The bar exam grader might spend 5 to 7 minutes on each essay question, so they have to move very quickly through their rubric. And they find here, thus, in the vast majority of states, a jury could not find the psychiatrist is liable to Susan. And then finally, we get to the Ptsd, which is the eggshell skull rule, or the unforeseeable extent of injury. And they find that here, she should be able to recover for her PTSD. And even though the extent of injury was unforeseeable, that is irrelevant under the eggshell plaintiff rule. All right, so that's the rubric. And this is now the grading criteria, the things that the grader is going to look for. Now let's grade my exam. So if I was a bar exam grader and I'm reading this for the first time, I'm just going to go through it very quickly like I would if I was grading bar exam questions. So here is my answer. I'm going to try to grade this by using all the material we've just seen, keeping the rubric in the back of my mind. So I'll give you the grade at the end. I'm looking for major issues, weaving in facts with law, assuming it starts at a 70, and we'll move up or down depending on what we find. By the way, I used that grading rubric for many years, so I'm very familiar in how to use that particular rubric. There are 3 lawsuits by Susan, each predicated on different theories of negligence. Okay, so this is an introduction. Given the amount of time that we had, so I'm going to critique this as well. If I had been doing more practice exams before this, I would not have written an introductory paragraph. Just not enough time given the huge number of issues that had to be discussed on this issue. So I would have skipped all that and just started with the first defendant. I mean, it's nice. It gives the reader a sense of where you're going. But boy, I probably lost, 2, 3, 4 minutes on that first paragraph, which I could have used in discussing more of the substance. First defendant is Jim, issues whether he owed any duty to Susan, a stranger. They listed it as issue, I think, 2. I started off with it. Then I have the rule statement. Okay, good. It's a good rule statement. The rescue doctrine holds that no duty. Okay, so I went a little bit deeper than the grading criteria mentioned, but I think the rater will go through this. So that's the rule. That's the duty. Then I put breach of duty in a separate paragraph. So what is it? Reasonable. Jim found Susan, so I'm going through the same facts that were decided. He goes to the office. He did nothing. Traditional rule, did not put in a word. Okay, so everything here that I'm seeing that we saw in the grading criteria, I see here. I think this first issue is very good. Again, I'm not assigning points issue by issue. We're going to grade this again holistically based on that grading criteria. All right, let's keep going. Second defendant, Psych, sued for negligence in failing to warn Susan of Anne's dangerous behavior. Okay, so I've spotted the issue, then the correct rule statement, no duty. Not exactly the ways in the grading criteria, that might hurt me a little bit, but I mentioned that there is generally no duty owed, and then I give the test. So this goes a little bit deeper than the grading criteria, but everything in the grading criteria is listed here on my exam. And then it has to be a readily identifiable person. In this situation, Anne told Psych, so I go provide some of the facts of what's going on, but does not identify a particular harm, and then I conclude Psych should be able to prevail against Anne. Then the university. This is the big issue. University will likely lose in a lawsuit for negligent security. Again, not exactly the language used in the grading criteria, but same sort of concept. I don't think that'll hurt me too much. University owed Susan a duty to secure the dormitories, as that's what a reasonably prudent person would do. It appears the university was aware of security problems. Okay, so I'm kind of jumping into the problem the university is going to have. The locks of entrances were broken. University failed to timely repair. So some of the basic facts are there. The next element is causation, actual proximate. And here I've noticed the grader was not looking for a long, really any discussion on actual or proximate cause or damages. But anyway, I went through it. So this brings us to the last issue. PTSD, I mentioned in the first sentence, we're talking about her emotional harm. I mentioned that it's the eggshell psyche rule. The grading criteria said the eggshell skull rule or the thin skull rule. I suspect this will be fine. Hopefully the grader will see the connection and realize I'm using a different name for the same rule. I list some facts, and I mentioned that she will be able to recover for this harm. All right, so let's go look at the grading criteria and see what grade I would assign to this if I were grading it. It's at least minimally competent. I need to see if it goes above that into the 80. And so the way the Board of Bar examiners would do this, you'll see that there are blanks in between 70 and 80. So if it's something that's better than a 70 but doesn't quite reach the criteria of an 80, then you'd give it a 75. So let's see, 80 is essay is generally well written in addition to identifying all major issues and weaving in facts. It's at least an 80. That's the grade I would give it. I'm not sure if it quite rises to the level of a 90, but it's an 80 or 85 is where I would place this at. So that's good. The way the Board of Bar examiners work, they grade the answer. I get an 80 or an 85, and if I get a lower score on one of the other essays, this essay boosts up my grade. I hope you found this exercise useful. By understanding how bar examiners grade and their criteria, you can better craft your essays. New videos every other Wednesday, so hit the subscribe button and bell so you can become a better student and a better lawyer.